We're recording. Full disclosure, oh, I'm the oldest.
Yeah, you're the oldest.
The truth is they're hungry.
Yeah. And then maybe put that candle. We gotta get the backdrop.
What do you normally do?
Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a special guest. This is Octavia, and actually, fun fact, Octavia and I have known each other for a very long time. She was a good friend of mine, older sister. Sorry, does that...
Older sister?
Oh,
I'm the older sister.
Yeah, you're the oldest.
Yes.
She has a sister, Sephra, and Sephra, Amy Lee, and I were all the same age, and Octavia was the cool older sister that we never got to hang out with.
Emphasis on cool.
So anyways, today I have Octavia here because she has this amazing business called Paper and Coin, and it's
financial coaching services for millennials.
So today what we want to talk about is how to plan your wedding without going into debt. We're about to enter peak engagement season, wedding season, and I know for me, the wedding was a huge expense, and a lot of people don't always recover from planning their wedding.
Yeah.
So we thought today would be a great time to talk about how to plan a wedding without going to debt, and Octavia has amazing tips and story about how she did it. So tell me about your wedding and what you did, like in planning, and how you were able to stay away from getting to debt.
Yeah. It was a crazy time, as I'm sure it is for most couples. As soon as you get engaged, we got engaged on New Year's Eve.
Oh, wow.
So there was just a lot of energy and excitement just in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, like basically we took that evening to just kind of hang out. But I kid you not, like the next morning, my mom called and was like, I have my list. I know, like, this is what I want to serve. And it was just crazy because you get hit with like, oh my gosh, we're doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, so basically it was the holidays, obviously, and so it wasn't working days until I think like January 3rd or something like that. And I remember I hadn't done a lot of research or anything. Like, I know a lot of girls buy magazines before they're even engaged.
Yeah, that was
I was not one of those girls, so I literally had to kind of start from scratch. So for me, the first thing I knew that I did have to do was book a venue. So I took those few days before the working days began and researched some common venues that were in my area or that I would want, and started making calls as soon as possible. And from that point on, it kind of was like venue, check, dress, check. That took a little bit longer, but yeah, like I just kind of started doing my research and checking the boxes off slowly as I went along. But I knew from day one that I did not want to go into debt for it. So I had been already living kind of a cash flow lifestyle, which basically means you are not literally paying for things with paper cash, but it just means that you don't use any form of debt. So whether that's a credit card or a line of credit or a loan of any kind. So I'd already been kind of living that lifestyle, so naturally planning a wedding was just gonna be an extension of that.
So for people that are getting married out there and they, want to start a life, I know a lot of people now, especially where we live in the Toronto area, living and cost of housing is really expensive. And so when you're getting married, a lot of times you're weighing out, well, do I buy a house or do I pay for a wedding? Or do I want to go and travel, and or do I want to pay for a wedding? There's so many other things that you can, put your money to without strapping yourself with debt. What was your process in really being like, okay, I'm not going to get into debt, and how did you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of what you're alluding to is all the different things that are pulling at you.
Yeah.
Even in the season of planning a wedding, right? Like you still have to live a life. You still have to go to work, make your rent, do your mortgage, and your car payments and all of that. So sacrifice is the name of the game, honestly, and this is not a popular opinion, but for us, like I knew this is gonna be a once in a lifetime thing, and I wanted it to be special. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted kind of in my head, and I didn't necessarily want to sacrifice that for something else. And I knew that, for my husband and I, we had a 9-month engagement period, so I knew this is temporary.
Yeah.
So where can I make some cuts in my budget and in my lifestyle that would allow me to save up enough to have like the wedding that I want? I knew I wanted to have a fall wedding, so that was never kind of in the question. I have big curly hair, so getting married in the summer in Toronto was not an option for me. So yeah, fall wedding was definitely ideal. So I knew that would give us at least 9 to 10 months to plan. And remember, we got engaged on New Year's Eve. So we had exactly from January 1st. So I knew that, okay, I want to have it within 9 to 10 months from now, possibly 11 months. How much money do I currently make? So I took my current income at the time as well as my fiance's. And again, side note, this is when you got to start having those conversations.
Yes.
So don't be shy to be like, how much money do you make?
It's a good point.
Like, what is your paycheck?
Yeah.
What are your expenses? What do you have debt? What does that look like? What are your obligations right now? So you need to have that conversation right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Possibly, preferably before as well.
True. Yeah.
So I took that time that I had and basically looked at my current income and literally just worked backwards. I thought, okay, I could make this much in the next 9 months. If I cut this out of my life, that means I can put more towards my wedding. So we literally just took our current expenses plus our income, so minus those expenses out of our income to see exactly how much we could save. At the time, I was living in my own apartment in Toronto, so I had my own place. My husband had his own condo as well, which we were both renting our own places. So we ended up actually moving back home to our mother's houses. That was huge. Like, making that move alone freed up like literally almost $2,000 a month between the two of us. So if you just clear that, you know, we were still paying rent to our moms, but it was like barely. So I mean, if you have that option to be able to get that kind of help from family, in the sense that it's not necessarily direct help, but it's kind of indirect, take advantage of those opportunities. So you really just have to find areas in your budget that you can cut and put that money, dedicate that money aside for your wedding.
What would you say to people that are, you know, about to, or they're in the middle of planning a wedding and they're feeling a lot of pressure from family, for friends, just on expectations or things that, you know, somebody wants them to do, or just to go all out? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, and it's not even family and friends these days. It's like TV and Instagram
and
Pinterest.
HGTV and on TLC and everything.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like for brides and grooms these days, it's, well, I mean, I got married 2 years ago, so it was basically the same for me. But yeah, like, there's just so much pressure to have this beautiful, elaborate, dreamy wedding.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, that's going to look different for everybody. I think number one is you have to stay true to yourself and your vision.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of like, you're a country gal and you want to have a barn wedding, and maybe your future husband's family is more like uppity and they want to have it in a hotel.
Yeah.
Stay true to your vision. And I think going along with that is you really have to have a really candid and honest conversation with your partner. And most guys will just say like, whatever you want, right? But no, ask them questions like, what do you envision it looking like? Do you envision a lot of people, less people? Do you want it more intimate, indoors, outdoors? Like, ask him those questions so that you can start to gauge where he's coming from. And then like find a common ground between the two of you. As much as you want your family and your friends to be there and have a great time and love your wedding, remember that when you're cash flowing it, you have a set timeline. So from the moment you get engaged to the moment you say I do, and even probably after, because you're still paying vendors.
True.
So you have a set timeline with a set income, and you know what I mean? Like, you have to just really stay true to what you're able to do and what you want to do.
Dealing with money in a relationship is very important, because money can be a huge point of contention.
It's like one of the major reasons people get divorced.
So dealing with it early on, and like you said, having an honest and open conversation begins your marriage, having honest and open and healthy conversations about money. So what would be some practical tips that you could give somebody while they're, you know, in the middle of planning a wedding?
Yeah. So number one, when you're cash flowing something, so that means that you've obviously saved up a certain amount. You're able to pay for things like outright, basically. You're not putting, there are certain bigger purchases like a venue, like you need a deposit for your venue.
Right.
But things like a wedding dress, I don't think you should have to put a deposit down for that. Set a budget. Do some research about, for example, I'll use the dress as an example. Obviously, see what's out there, see what your style is that you like, and then when you go to try them on, I think you might be a little bit sticker shock. But for me, I actually ended up being surprised at how low they were.
Oh.
I don't know, I just didn't know how much they cost. So I already had that amount set aside. So when I found a dress that I liked and it fit well and whatnot, I was able to negotiate. So that's one thing I would recommend, is negotiate. When you have cash without the paper, but the actual money set aside, vendors are more likely to just give you a deal because they want to close the deal.
Yeah, they know they're going to get paid right away.
They're going to get this big lump sum of money right away versus like installments of payments, if that makes sense. It just helps them with their cash flow as well. So full disclosure, my dress was listed at $2,000 before tax. I asked him to knock it down by a couple hundred, so I ended up paying like $1,700 just by negotiating. And then that way, because my budget was $2,000, but I didn't want to pay the extra from the tax. So I just negotiated down a bit, basically saved on the taxes. The other thing was we got a free like 3-tier wedding cake. Our cake was free. They threw all these like freebies in to entice us, and it worked. So again, just ask your vendor like, hey, is there any special offer that you can give me by booking with you? So so just again, ask, have the boldness to ask, because it's a one-time thing and they want your business.
So looking back at your wedding, I always like to do this, and I ask my sister, I've asked my friend Rachel, what in your opinion are like 3 or 4 things that you would not skimp on for a wedding?
So thankfully, I actually was very mindful of this from the beginning. I don't know, it was a little crazy. It's also in both of our cultures to eat a lot. So.
Well, I mean, when we were the same, food was number one, and that was actually because, I mean, I'm big on food, but Andrew can only remember weddings by the food.
Absolutely.
And that was like a selling point for me, is that people remember the food. They don't remember a lot of other things, but it's true. I can think about a wedding and be like, that was a good meal. You know, like,
absolutely.
I can't remember everything, but I remember the food.
And that really is kind of the biggest bulk of your budget. So we were very intentional when we were making our budget and setting aside that timeline of how much can we spend. We knew that venue and catering was going to be about 50%. So, and we knew for us it was probably going to be more than 50. So we set that as within our budget. So food was a non-negotiable. The other non-negotiable for myself and my husband was like good music. So we made sure we wanted a DJ. We wanted it to be like old school hip hop. We were very specific. So luckily we got a great guy. And also, so myself, my husband and I have 2 different cultures and 2 very distinct music styles. So we had to really search for someone that could do like South Asian music as well as Hispanic Latin music. And it was amazing. So that was like a non-negotiable. Good dance music. For myself as a bride, hair and makeup was like a non-negotiable. Which I know that sounds kind of strange because I'm not really even into all that. But for me, because I don't do makeup well myself, and it's a stressful thing, like doing a winged liner, forget it. So I just wanted to sit there and just have people tugging away and doing it for me.
And your pictures last forever. And you're in the picture. You want to remember that day looking the best.
Especially with the hair thing for me. I was like, nope, this like lock it in.
So then on the opposite side of the spectrum, what are things you don't think that you should spend money on?
Things that you could probably do without. This is going to be different for everyone. But for myself, limo transportation. We priced it out, and for a few hours, I think it was going to be like $600. And that is ridiculous. Like when you're, and this is not a knock to the transportation industry or limo industry, but it was just personally for us, I thought that's a lot of money for our budget. And because we were cash flowing everything, that's like actual dollars that I could put towards something else. So for me, I just thought, you know what? It'll just take a little bit of coordination and organization, but we'll get the bridal party to and from the ceremony to the photos to the reception. Like, we'll figure it out. And we did. And it honestly was not a big deal.
So I want to thank Octavia for being here. I love talking about weddings, especially wedding budgets.
She does.
I do. I like J-Lo was like my hero when I was a kid. Like, I wanted to be the wedding planner. Everybody knew it. But I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge. Now, you have an offer for anybody that is interested or that is currently in the middle of wedding planning right now.
Yeah, so if you actually hop over to my website, it's paperandcoin.ca. I actually have a special wedding budgeting template that you can use. It was actually the exact same thing I used. And I did cash, so full disclosure, we cash flowed our wedding within 9 months, and we didn't get any help from parents. No, not like significant help. And our wedding was about $25,000. And I used that budget template. So that's literally my budget template. It's got a checklist for everything you'll need, and it kind of has the different columns that you can create and customize your budget. So if you go to paperandcoin.ca/wedding budget, that's one word, wedding budget, you can download the template for yourself.
I'll have all of the links to her site and to the wedding budget down below. Thank you again for being here, and thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below, and I will see you again for another video. Bye!